Hello there. Today I'm going to talk about my understanding of the Vietnam War. A lot of people are not going to agree with me on certain things, or on most of what I have to say, because, well, the thing is, the Vietnam War it's a taboo subject. Most people don't even want to talk about it. It happened many years ago. It involved the US and Vietnam, not Canada, where I live. So people have no connection to it. But the way I look at it is it's an ancestral thing. Um, I'm a white guy. Guys who were similar to me went into Vietnam to stop communism. Now, I'll get into what my opinion of communism is because, to be honest with you, I don't think it exists. Certainly not in the way they portray it. What it is it's a set of ideologies and beliefs that were counter towards the Western beliefs and who was sharing power with who. Because the Vietnam War was at the height of the Cold War with the Russians and the Chinese. Those were, they were big countries. They still are. And Vietnam, that little tiny country on the coast with only what, 20 million people? That was an important war that had to be fought because let's face it, Russia and China wanted a war, and this was a proxy war. The Americans went into Vietnam, whom were invited, I might add, by some Vietnamese. And it is true that the Americans were quite brutal when they were there, considering, taking things into consideration. I mean, American soldiers did rape Vietnamese women. They did, kill people unnecessarily. And it was a pretty sloppy operation, to be honest with you. But the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese army were pretty merciless as well. They would threaten their own civilian population with death, torture, whatever. They would do anything to win. And, they'd make them hold on to weapons and hold food stores for them and things like that. And the Americans would come along and find these weapons and go, well, were these guys collaborating with them or are they legitimate? They just had no choice. I think it was more that they had no choice, but I could see why it's a question. And they were all wound up too tight and they were all angry. So it led to unnecessary deaths. Platoon is an amazing example of what happened in particular small villages in Vietnam with the American soldiers just on a kill first, ask questions later mentality. And that's really too bad because a lot of people in Vietnam were just living in their own country and trying to get by. But other people, they wanted to do their own thing. They wanted their government in there. And it was a real nasty war. But it had to be fought, in my opinion. And it's a shame the Americans lost. Well, theoretically, they lost. I mean, it's all relative. Like, do you consider the Vietnamese victory when they're still dying of Agent Orange? They're getting cancer from that. Vietnam's still a poor country, fairly unrecognizable. Um, they got their victories out of it. They won the propaganda war, which is an important thing. They made the Americans look bad. They made them look incompetent, and they made them look brutal. And they won the support of their local population eventually, completely, through their propaganda. But that's a bit to do with racism because they look at these white guys as invaders and the Viet Cong. Some people will go as far to say as the Viet Cong are the Vietnamese people. They may be Vietnamese, but they're not the Vietnamese people. If you're threatening to kill and torture your own citizens, you're not the people. You're just some asshole with a gun. It's as simple as that. I mean, Jason Unruh or Maoist Rebel News would argue that the Viet Cong were the Vietnamese people. And I don't agree with him at all. I think he's a doofus. Anyway, there are other aspects of the propaganda war. It's not just winning favor at home, although that's important. And the Americans lost that because of all those stupid hippies going, oh, you shouldn't be fighting this war, man. Peace. Let's smoke a doobie instead. Why do you have to fight these wars? I mean, I don't know anything about war, but I'm gonna cast my opinion about it. Stupid hippies. I'll never be a hippie, man. It's funny because my dad calls me a hippie because this is the longest my hair has been in ages. It's not even long at all. It's not a military cut like he would like, but that's another story. Anyway, getting back to the propaganda aspect, it's not just winning the battles at home, winning favor at home. That's a big part of it, and that's where the Americans lost. But it's also a more grim, a darker side of propaganda. It's what either enemy soldiers will think will happen to them if they enter your country and you're at war with them. What I mean is, I saw a thing a long time ago on the internet, a Faces of Death in Asia. And some American soldiers were tortured, and they cried and they screamed like anybody would. But the Vietnamese go, "Oh, they're bitches." In fact, there's a Family Guy clip, which I'll show you in a second, that depicts exactly their sentiment towards American soldiers. But anyway, that's entirely irrelevant. Anybody's going to cry and scream with the kind of things they're doing. Like they would put bamboo under your fingernails and split your fingernails from your fingers, pour scorpions on you, and they got big scorpions over there. Feed some of your friends to saltwater crocodiles. They would use man traps on you, smeared with excrement so that it would become infected. They had their POW camps were some of the scariest places on earth. And I don't think a lot of people understand the fact that they would do it again. And if they could, they'd come over here and do it as retaliation for us going into their country. Now, Vietnam has been invaded several times by several different people, not people, but countries over the years, like Belgium, France, Japan, even China. But a lot of those are actually Western-sided countries. So if they could, they would invade us. And there's no reason they wouldn't employ the same techniques, their same mentality on war, and their disregard for human decency. Don't get me wrong. The Americans, they do fairly vicious things too. Like Omar Carter was in Guantanamo for 15 years, or 10 years or whatever it was. And he was just a 15-year-old when he killed an American soldier. So, I mean, they threw the book at him, and I'm sure he did not have a pleasant experience there. I'm absolutely certain of that. But he's the poster boy. I bet you he's going to cross every T and dot every I for the rest of his life. Last I checked, he was in Canada. I don't even know if he's freed yet or not. I mean, I vaguely know the story. I mean, I got a lot of things going on in my life, man. I don't have time to read up on articles and things like that. Making videos, man. Doing my thing. Got to work every day. Anyway. So, what I was getting at is the propaganda war is a vicious thing, and it's not all good news. It's a lot of it is, really vicious, evil stuff. Because I mean, what better deterrent to have than to put something on popular media of your enemy dying in a horrible way? That's gonna brainwash your enemy into going, oh, I don't want to go in there, man. If they catch me, that's what they're gonna do to me. And I don't blame people. It's the disease of fear. And I mean, what else can you say about that? I have seen a few Vietnamese movies in which they do torture Americans. I'm not going to give the sources for those. You go find them yourself if you want to watch them. Don't believe me? I don't care. That's what happened. I actually don't even have access to them anymore. It's kind of weird, the internet. And not that I enjoyed watching them in the first place, but really put a thought in my head. You know, these guys aren't our friends. It doesn't matter that it happened 40, 45 years ago. They're still not our friends. And anybody who goes on the Vietnamese side, I don't give a crap if they were defending their country or not, man. They were about communism, and communism wanted to destroy us. So screw them. A lot of people aren't going to agree with me on that, but you know what? I don't care. I feel real bad for the American veterans of the Vietnam War who became homeless. And something like 25% of all homeless in the US are Vietnam veterans. That's a bunch of bullshit. Now, that might be to maybe conceal their identity, make them anonymous, make them disappear so that nobody comes along after them, because they're basically dead or basically non-existent if they're homeless. Or who knows, maybe the hippies all just went, oh, they fought in the war, they were about death, therefore give them nothing, make them poor. And I just go, you little wimpy bitch hippies. You didn't do anything yourselves except sit at home and smoke a doobie and maybe sit on a lawn in a protest smoking a doobie. And you think you have the right to tell other people how to conduct their business, especially when you know nothing about it? Like, I'm open to debate. Someone could debate my points and I will listen to them. And I'm usually better at typing or written conversation because I have time to think about my answer. Whereas a face-to-face chat, even on YouTube or whatever, is a little bit harder for me. But anyway, I I wanted to state that a lot of nasty things happened in Vietnam, and in some ways the Vietnamese won, but in other ways they didn't win. So, for anyone who's ignorant enough to say, the Vietnamese won, the Americans had no business being there, blah, 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 you're reinforcing an argument that I don't agree with. And it doesn't matter who says that to me, we ain't friends after that. It's just like, I don't even want to know you. Anyway, that's my rant on the Vietnam War. There's so much more to talk about. I will make other videos in the future about it. Get my facts straight and all that. But that's my general opinion as of now. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later.